Okay, central Scotland. So, first of all, I just want to address the fact that Glasgow and Edinburgh, that area is typically what people call central Scotland, the central belt. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about places that you can go either as a day trip from those cities to the north, or places that would make a relatively easy overnight stop. So kind of not the far, far north and the far Highlands, and also not the central belt or below that, the border regions. So just kind of this area, including St. Andrews, where you see on the map, Kenmore, Stirling, and some other places, okay? So by the way, this is a map of our guided tour of Scotland. So most of the slides that I'm going to show you follow this route or come from somewhere on this route, with the exception of one or two. So at any rate, let's get started. Stirling Castle is probably the most popular day trip from Edinburgh or Glasgow, and it's well worth visiting. Even if you visited Edinburgh Castle, it's absolutely worth visiting. It's only about 30-40 minutes by train from either of those cities. And again, it's just beautifully, beautifully situated, and there are a few other sites associated with it. But the castle itself, of course, is a castle complex containing lots of different sites within it. So you have the Great Hall, what was the largest secular medieval space in Europe at one point. You have the Stirling Heads Gallery. So these are giant oak medallions that would have been at one point colorfully painted and stuck to the ceiling of the king's chambers in the castle. And of course, they're thoughtfully explained and everything like that, so it's very fascinating. My favorite part of Stirling Castle is actually the kitchens. So you can go down a staircase into the dark kitchens, and they have all this fake food set up, and you can learn about what it took to feed this entire community of people living within the castle walls. So a lot to be seen. And you have docents in character and in costume, so you can ask them about what it's like to live in the castle and serve whichever king and queen they were serving at that time. So north of the Forth, Stirling Castle was really important because it was kind of the only place that you could get from the Lowlands into the Highlands. They would say whoever holds Stirling holds Scotland, because it's up on that hill, you can defend it very easily, and you can see for miles and miles and miles. And the reason that you can't just go north is because it's cut off by a body of water. So eventually a river turns into this big inlet, and this body of water is called the Firth of Forth. So to go straight north from Edinburgh, you cross over the Firth of Forth, and at any rate, that's what we're going to do right now for some of the sites just to the north. If you have a car, a good first stop heading north from Edinburgh might be Culross Palace. And it looks like Culross, but it's sort of Culross. What it is a medieval royal borough, a burg. So the palace itself is actually just a house that belonged to this rich industrialist at the end of the 1500s and early 1600s. So you get to see what his life was like, what his home, the inside of his home looked like, and you can take a tour of it. It also has a beautiful market square in the town itself that you can check out. So it's just a really lovely little town to explore and a fascinating site from a historical perspective. Anybody who's a fan of Outlander, the Outlander series, also they filmed some of the episodes, or some scenes from some of the episodes also in Culross Palace and in Culross town. St. Andrews is a bit further north, and of course St. Andrews is famous for being the home of golf. It's also a university town, but I think if you're a golf person, you absolutely have to take a trip to St. Andrews. You may not get to play on the old course, in fact you probably won't, but there are plenty of other great golf courses in the area, so don't be put off. You can just have a stroll around, or you can go putting just next door at the Himalayas, which I just think is such a cute name for a putting green. But at any rate, golf lovers might also enjoy the Golf Museum, which is a lot of fun. I'm personally not really, I'm not a golfer, but I love the Golf Museum. It's a lot of fun to just learn about the history of the sport. And non-golfers will just enjoy the beautiful beaches in St. Andrews or exploring the ruins of their cathedral. So St. Andrews was a very important ecclesiastical center. It's sort of the epicenter of the Scottish Reformation, and for a long time before that, that's where pilgrims went. And you can see the ruins of its cathedral today. It's free to roam around, or you can pay to go up in the tower. Another stop that you might consider that's often overlooked is the city of Dundee. So it's a smaller city, I think about 150,000 people, but it's it's a good place to stop for a few reasons. One, there is the HMS Discovery ship and center. So this was an Arctic exploring vessel, a 3-masted traditional wooden vessel. It was built in 1900, I think, and that was what Ernest Shackleton and Falcon Scott went exploring in the Arctic in. So there's the whole visitor center, and that's where the ship is docked, and it was built in Dundee originally, so it's in its home. Adjacent to the HMS Discovery is the new Victoria and Albert Museum of Design. So there's the one in London, and now there's one in Dundee, which is a city that's well known for its contributions to design. And Dundee was also an industrial powerhouse like Glasgow, and the primary thing that was made there was jute. And they have a wonderful museum called the Verdant Works, and it's all about the jute industry. So you have some of the old machines, and it doesn't necessarily sound like the most fascinating thing, but it really is a great museum. So if you're driving north anyway, I would encourage you to stop in Dundee for a quick look around. One of my favorite small towns in Scotland is the town of Dunkeld. So Dunkeld, you can drive there, but it is also on the train line going north. So it has a sort of a twin town, Dunkeld and Burnham. Burnham of Burnham Wood fame, for those who know their Shakespeare. But at any rate, Dunkeld is a beautiful little town, very cute. It has a gorgeous arched stone bridge over the river that was built by the famous Scottish engineer Thomas Telford. It's just a lovely place to wander around and check out the shops, have a nice pub lunch by the river, and it also has some cathedral ruins. So before St. Andrews, Dunkeld was sort of the ecclesiastical center in Scotland. So after the Vikings came and they moved inland, I'll talk about that later, but Dunkeld was a very important center. And today, the cathedral itself is in ruins, but the internal part is still used as the church for the town. So it's a nice visit. Dunkeld is situated in a part of Scotland called Perthshire, and Perthshire is Scotland's big tree country. So it kind of reminds me of the Pacific Northwest a fair amount, but what that means for travelers is that it's a great place to go hiking or just hill walking or just on a nice gentle walk in the forest. A popular walk just outside of Dunkeld is called the Hermitage, and it's an easy path, as you can see here, and it was just the property of one of the local aristocracy who built a little forested getaway and a little fake cave, a little cave where he had a fake hermit hide out and surprise his guests to woo them. Another option for a quaint small town to stay would be the village of Kenmore. It's really quite small, but absolutely beautifully situated, as you can see. And it does have one kind of must-do, in my opinion, site, which is the Kenmore Crannog Centre. So you might be thinking, what on earth is a crannog, right? But what it is basically a fortified dwelling that would have been inhabited basically back in the Iron Age. And they found remnants of these in lakes all over Scotland and in Ireland as well. And this is one that's been thoughtfully reconstructed using all of the same methods that it would have been constructed all those years ago. So it's a museum. You actually can go out into the crannog, and all of the people who work there are just really passionate about life back then, life in the Iron Age. They'll tell you all about what happened, what the people ate, how they lived, how they built things, how they survived. So it's very fascinating, and you even get to learn about some of that Iron Age technology, making fire with sticks and all that type of thing. So after you visit the Crannog Centre or the crannog itself, then you come back onto land for a demonstration of some of that technology. So I absolutely love it. It is just takes you right back in time, and it's fabulous. Also in the area are a lot of whiskey distilleries. Of course, this is true for most regions in Scotland, so this isn't the only place that you can go to a distillery, but it's a nice option if you don't have a ton of time and maybe you're in Glasgow and Edinburgh, and then maybe you just have a day or two to do an overnight. You can't get that far north, and you want to be in the countryside and check out a distillery or two. So lots in the area, just throwing that out there. But usually you can get a tour, and then that comes with a tasting at the end. So I'd encourage you to check that out.